He's also the inventor of Merkle trees that is heavily used in the blockchain space. So in another couple of minutes, we are going to come up and discuss what are the various ways today as mankind we are trying to solve aging, and what are the problems, what are the challenges that are out there, and why do we even need to solve it? I mean, why not just be born, do great things, and go back to Earth? Maybe that is what we, resolve for, I guess. How many of you, by the way, would like to live forever? Hands up. 1, 2, and the cameraman there, 3, 4. Okay, so the rest of you don't care. All right. Well, how many of you have a living will, by the way? Okay, a lot more people have living will. Nice. Well, so why wouldn't you want to live forever? If you have a living will, you're getting your properties and your assets to move forward. Wouldn't you also want to live forever? No? Okay, Robin is saying no. Robin, I'll ask you why. Why not?
I think you live forever in the spirit of the people who touched in your life, but I have no desire to become more and more decrepit and have a lesser quality of life. So with
Got it. By the way, Robin runs digital money at the CES, which is going to happen in the second week of January. So if you guys want free passes, they can come bug her.
Okay, now Immortality has...
All right, let me invite the panel members on stage. Ralph, Mark, Maria. Anywhere, whichever seat is comfortable.
Crowd? Okay, join us here, be social.
I know this is too far away. We should probably move closer. We'll solve that.
We have a choice, very quantized. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're on.
I seem to be on.
I think I'm on.
You're not on? Oh my heavens.
Check.
They swore it would
This
work.
works.
Honest, they said it would work.
Well, what we will do is, why don't we give like a couple of minutes and you guys can introduce yourself. I know, Mark, you were there at Block to the Future in San Francisco. So why don't we start with you? Why don't you introduce, tell us what Forever Labs is and your role, and then we'll...
Sure. So I'm President and Chief Science Officer of Forever Labs, and we're a life extension company, and very specifically what we do is we bank your stem cells now in the most youthful state, and then we leverage that to practice health maintenance throughout your life. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. I'm a senior fellow at IMM, and I'm also on the board of directors of Outpour, which is a cryonics organization. How many people have heard of cryonics? Has everyone heard of it? Okay, most people have heard of it. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I am a Global Outreach Coordinator for Sense Research Foundation, and we are developing new biotechnologies to address the diseases of aging, or the disease of aging, if you want to say that. I know some people don't like to hear that. I'm also an Outpour member, so if we don't, get to solve the aging problem in my lifetime, I have Plan B.
Good stuff. How many people are Outpour members? Any Outpour members in the audience? Anyone signed up for cryonics? How many people are thinking about cryonics? Anyone thinking about cryonics? A couple people thinking about cryonics. Okay. How many people want to be alive, maybe not immortal? How many people would like to be alive and healthy and feeling good 200 years from now? 200, a more modest goal. 200 years from now. Okay. So a fair number of people alive and healthy 200 years from now. Okay, that's a thinkable goal. Okay, good. Yeah.
Ralph, since you asked that, what is the cost of going through the Outpour program?
Okay, well, they're annual dues, about $700 a year. I forget exactly what the price tag is. And then there's a life insurance policy. If you go whole body, it's $200,000. And for us people who think that the brain is the essential thing and the rest can be built up, it's $80,000 for the neuro option. So you get your choice. You got to figure out which one you want to do. and it's less expensive for neuro, and I'm signed up neuro, but you might be conservative and go for the whole body option. It's a bit more expensive, but if you pay for it with life insurance, it's not too bad. Oh, and if you want an introduction to cryonics, there's a great one that was written only a few years ago. It's called Why Cryonics Makes Sense, and it's by a guy who writes a blog called Wait But Why. If you just Google it, Why Cryonics Makes Sense, and it'll pop up, and it's a wonderful introduction to the whole subject.
Got it. One of the questions people fundamentally have every time, I mean, at least I have had that conversation about Outpour, is this is not going to work. This is somewhat of not really a scam, but this is so hypothetical, so far-fetched that, what do you have to say? Like, what are the...
It's so far-fetched, it's like talking about going to the moon in the 1940s. My heavens, what a shocking concept. It's so far in the future, I mean, geez. Well, actually, when you look at it, I went into this many years ago. When I was in Silicon Valley, I'd gotten married, we'd bought a house, we had our careers taken care of, I'd finished my PhD. So there I was doing my usual long-term planning, and I figured, well, what's the next thing that happens? Life goes along, you know, career happens, things occur, and then I drop dead. That might not be exactly what would be optimal. Maybe there are some alternatives. So I began to look into the various options for life extension. You know, is there some way modern technology could perhaps deal with this particular issue? And after reviewing a number of possibilities, I concluded that cryonics had a pretty high probability of working. And in fact, given the fact that what would be applied would not be the technology of today, but the technology of, you know, pick your time frame, 40 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, whatever. My conclusion was the probability of success was pretty high. And the reason for this is the cryopreservation process need only preserve the information, which also gets back to another thing, which is why are there so many people involved in cryptocurrencies who are interested in this cryonic stuff? And I think part of the reason is that if you're interested in cryptocurrencies, you have a background in computer science and technology, and you're aware of the fact that the fundamental issue is preserving information. And cryopreservation does a very nice job of preserving information. Now, it doesn't preserve function, and if you talk with people who have a background in biochemistry and biology, they'll say, wait a minute, if you cryopreserve someone, they are not in a functional state, which is correct. If you just warm somebody up after cryopreserving them, they're not in a good functional state. But the information content looks like it is preserved, and as a consequence, once we have adequate medical technology, then we should be able to repair the system and restore it to a functional state. And in case you're interested, I wrote a paper on it called Cryonics, Cryptography, and Maximum Likelihood Estimation way back in the 90s somewhere. And I think, I'd like to think that's one of the reasons that various folks, including Hal Finney, for example, signed up to be cryopreserved. So that's a bit of a soliloquy. Maybe I should let some other folks say a few words.
Definitely. Maria, I know from Sense the route that they are taking towards this, like the end goal is the same, right? So how is Sense trying to solve this? And I know that the way we look at it is, at least from a Sense standpoint, is that, hey, it's a disease and it's like malaria and that we need to solve it. So how is Sense progressing this forward?
Well, the way we see aging is that aging is the cause of all the diseases that we get as we age. So basically, if you have to define aging, it is losing your health, because that's what the main thing is about aging that happens to us. So yes, we see it as medicine is trying to work on the disease of aging, but the approach that we have is really not working. So we have solved a lot of the infectious diseases, but we have not solved one of the degenerative diseases that we get as we age. Even though we're working on Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease and cancer, the cancer that we get as we age, which eventually, if we live long enough, we're going to get one of those diseases or several of them, and we're going to die. So obviously, aging equals disease. This is no news. I know people say, oh, but aging is not a disease. But in fact, that's what really happens to us. We get really sick. So we are approaching it as a medical problem. And this is something that, for some reason, Aubrey de Grey, who is the founder of Sense Research Foundation, he realized one day that medicine and science, they were not thinking about it that way. They were just thinking, oh, this is normal, it's natural, it has to happen. But how crazy is that, right? I mean, 100,000 people die a day of aging. We spend $40,000 a second only in the US to treat people who are sick of diseases that come with aging, and we don't do anything but ameliorating symptoms, delaying some of these diseases a little bit. And in fact, we're keeping people alive longer, but in a really, really bad state. So we realized that something had to be done about this. And so Aubrey basically explained aging and broke it down into 7 processes that happen at a molecular and cellular level. And the approach is an engineering approach. So the idea is to fix the damage. Gerontology and geriatrics look at the metabolism, and they try to understand metabolism and stop it from aging us or from causing the diseases of aging. But we realize that between the disease and the metabolism, there's the damage that causes the pathologies. So Aubrey's idea is to intervene in the damage and repair it so that we can prevent the pathologies and get aging under medical control.
How far is Dr. Aubrey de Grey from actually solving it? Do you see it's a 5-year, 10-year?
Well,
what's like the guesstimate here?
We think that we're going to see big changes in the next 15 to 20 years, and then, the therapies that we will hopefully have by then will extend our lives enough so that we can catch the next wave. And as we know, this is moving in an accelerated way, so 20 years are going to mean a lot of progress, right? Maybe worth of 300 years before, something like that. And the world is accelerating. So we can get into what he calls the longevity escape velocity theory, that if we can live 30 or 40 years longer, we may be able to live 500 years, or why not 1,000?
I know it takes a lot of research to get there, and Vitalik had donated to the Sense Foundation, I believe, in March of this year.
Yeah. 2.4.
What kind of amount of R&D are you trying to raise from a capital standpoint that will help us get there in the next 15-20 years? What is like the amount of donations or contributions Sense is looking at on an annual basis to help fund this research?
At this point, where we are at with our research, I think we should be comfortable with 40 or 50 million a year. It's not so much really. Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, it's not.
Got it. Mark, I'm going to talk to you about this. So Alcor is after the fact, right, if I may say it so, and Sense is before the fact. How does Forever Labs solve this challenge of resolving death?
Yeah, so I would say that everybody here is here for a similar reason. It's because they've kind of made this, if this, then that, and they're projecting out. So we have digital scarcity now. So we have digital scarcity and we can transfer assets trustlessly. What does that mean? And everybody in this room has kind of made that leap, and they've said, well, oh my, we have this now. Well then that and that and that is all going to change. And something is happening similar in biology. We're starting to understand our biology, how it works, and how actually, specifically how it breaks down due to age. And if you start to look at that, and you start to look at the progress that's made, you can start making that same kind of leap, if this, then that. And so what we're doing right now is actually we're banking youthful biology, because there's an aspect of your aging that seems to be nigh irreversible, and we want to prevent that. We want to pool, because we can expand these cells outside your body and put them to work. So we can draw on this like youthful pool, and that's going to kind of lower the bar on the application of some of these technologies. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I can drive about an hour down the road, and I can go to the Henry Ford Museum, and I can get in a Model T and take a ride. And that Model T wasn't built to last 110 years. But it, you know, and it doesn't blow our minds to see that Model T, you know, because we understand you can do preventative maintenance and then keep that car going. And the same kind of thing is happening in biology. We're making that kind of the knowledge and basically our ability to interact with the biology is accelerated to the point that we're being able to practice preventative maintenance on that kind of level. And that's going to lead to, you know, I was talking to Ralph and Maria just before I got on the stage. Kurt, you'd asked the question about, you know, who wants to live forever? And I always pose it this way. I say, well, if on your birthday, if somebody said to you, hey, how about this? You can choose. Do you want to age this next year, or do you just want to just not age for this next year? Everybody would just say, well, I'll just put it off a year, you know? And you put it off, and you put it off, and you put it off. And that's how this is going to come. And that's how it's already coming. And also, you know, it's going to be about 1,000 years before we have somebody that's 1,000 years old. So this isn't something like, you know, like it's going to disrupt all of our, you know, culture and economics overnight.
You mean I can't be immortal right away?
You can't. Well, you might already be, but we just don't know yet. We just don't know yet.
What's the cost for this, Mark? I mean, from Forever Labs, I know there's
Sure.
a service that it's being provided. So what's the cost to a regular user?
Right. So if you want to get your stem cells banked, what you do is we'll send you to an orthopedic surgeon or similar, and they'll take some of your bone marrow out. That costs $2,500 and $250 here to store it. One other thing we're offering right now is there's a lot of people getting liposuctions across the country for many different reasons, hundreds of thousands of them, and they're throwing adipose tissue that has a lot of stem cells in the garbage, and so we're giving the option to bank that too.
Got it.
Go back a little bit to what Mark was saying, that everybody is shocked when you say we're trying to stop aging. Or this is going, like you said, it's going to come slowly. It's not going to happen overnight. Everybody will have the option, just like you have the option today if you have cancer to go and get treated or not, which is a type of life extension, right? Because we could just say, oh, I'm going to die and I have to die, and it's natural. It's the natural thing to happen because, you know, cancer is, or an infection disease you get, or everybody goes to a doctor and try to get medicine to live a little longer, whatever that is. And the limitation that we have now of 100 years, for example, if we didn't have that and we had 200 years, it would be, no one would be saying, oh, you know, 200 years is a lot of time. So this is going to happen slowly as anything else in medicine happened. Like before we couldn't have certain treatments, it would have been science fiction to have a heart transplant, etc. So this is going to be the same thing, yeah.
Right. Outpour has a program that users can subscribe to. You know, Forever Labs has something that users can subscribe to. Is there some program from Sense that users can subscribe to or buy into?
The users, what is the term you're saying?
I'm sorry?
The users what?
The users can opt into a program. Like with Outpour, it could be like full body preservation, or it could be, and Mark has for your recovery of your cells. Is there something with Sense that the users can sign on now, or do they have to wait till they...
No, we are a research organization, and we are creating technologies that will probably be, you know, will end up in some kind of therapy. We don't know what that's going to look like. It can be an injection, it can be a pill. We don't know. It's going to take some time. So
I'd say they could regularly donate to Sense, though.
So that's basically what we need is donations so that we can go forward with our research, which is going amazingly well. But yeah.
Got it. I know we are a little bit out of time, but this question is for Ralph. There's an interesting article that you wrote about death and informational death, where the definition of death is if you're just your heartbeat or your brain cells are not having activity. You can still be brought back to life, but if you destroy, could you explain that and how cryptography is actually involved in that part?
So it's interesting that as time has gone by, our definition of death has changed. So 1,000 years ago, if you stopped breathing, you were dead, right? He's not breathing, he must be dead. And then as time went by, people got more sophisticated. In the 1800s, they began to say, wait a minute, you gotta wait for the heart to stop. Somewhere in the 1800s, 1900s, people started to say, if the heart stops, then you're dead. If the heart stops, you're dead. And then as time went on, we began to realize, wait a minute, if the heart stops, you're not dead. You can actually call a crash cart and you can restart the heart. So people began to say, wait a minute, you have to redefine death again, because it's not a question of the heart stopping, it's a question of the heart stopping and you can't restart it. So now we have the paddles and the scene you've all seen in the movies, because every movie and every television show loves having the paddles. And suddenly you can restart the heart. And again, the definition of death changes. So it's becoming very, very obvious that the definition of death depends on your technology. And as the technology advances, the definition of death changes. So the question becomes, is there a definition of death which is independent of the technology? And the answer is yes. And the result is information theoretic death. And that's death that occurs when no technology can, in principle, restore you to good health. And that point occurs when your brain is so damaged and the memories in your brain are so obliterated that no technology, in principle, can restore you to good health. And that's the information theoretic definition of death. And that's something that people who deal with computers and cryptocurrencies and bits kind of understand in an intuitive sense. And it's also something, you know, I have a background in cryptography and cryptanalysis, so it's something I sort of understood without realizing that it was something I understood. And so it was something that I brought to analyzing the concept of cryonics, and other people did not bring that concept. So when you talk with someone who is trained in, for example, the medical sciences, they don't think about it in that way. And they say, well, a human being is a complex molecular machine, and when that complex molecular machine isn't functioning, you're dead. But that's not really the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is when the information that's encoded in your brain cannot be recovered. Even if the molecular machinery is busted, the molecular machinery can be repaired if you have a technology such as molecular nanotechnology. Oh yeah, I study that. Interesting. So I'm aware of that too. So I bring to bear both the cryptanalytic understanding and the molecular nanotechnology. So to me, it's intuitively obvious that the information, as long as it's there, can be recovered. And that brings you to the information theoretic concept of death, which is actually making it into the mainstream. So many of the sort of critical care research articles are beginning to recognize that there is something more than just, gee, are you applying the right sort of biological treatment? There's something more fundamental as they find more and more that this concept of death is eluding them. As they find that more and more, they can keep reviving people despite more and more damage. So I think that's the basic concept.
Well, finally, Maria, how can people reach out to SENS if they want to donate to the foundation?
Well, our website is www.sens.org, S-E-N-S. I'm going to be around here. I also have key tags with QR codes if you want to donate for all kinds of crypto money. And find me, I guess, our website be the easiest thing I can say here on stage.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Ralph, how can people reach out to Outpour for the biopreservation side of things?
Outpour.org. It's
it.
on the internet.
Mark, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, foreverlabs.com. Shoot me an email, mark@foreverlabs.
Got it. Thank you, folks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.